AS, because I just knew like it was too big and it was too somber. I was like, and there had already been a few that had started to do this to deal with some of the long-term impacts of when Scotch was professionally dying in the end of the 70s and the 80s. I was really struggling, right? And I was just like, there had already been all these barrel shortages in the industry, and I was like, okay, well, it's got to be something like that. And he's like, yeah, so they're going to go over to NAS. They're going to wipe out everything essentially under 25. And then they're going to go hyper premium with that stuff. And it's going to be a big change. And Macallan's such a, goalpost for the industry, such a long-standing institution in the world of single malt. And again, as we were talking about earlier, Kent, because they were amongst the original three that started professionally pushing single malts to the market internationally in like the early 60s, really 1963. Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, Macallan, they were big pushers, right? And 70s is really when they ramped up. And it was in response to the beginning of the dying of the industry. And blends were dying. So anyway, so he told me all this and I was like a little bit shocked, but also not at all, because I'm like, yeah, of course, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about why that happened tonight when we talk about the sherry casks and some of these things. But just to honor Jay, he was a gentleman. Of course, he said, this is really important information. It's for you as a store manager and owner. Like, you can't just spread this around. I was like, of course, Jay. I think that was the only time in our entire career he ever gave me a footnote. Like, I had known him already at that point for probably, I don't know, about a year and a half or two, and we become good buds. But I was like, that was the only time he was like, footnote, don't share this. And I was like, okay. Okay. So there you go. That's my little bringing Jay into this for us. So
I love it.
Later left them. So I don't know.
Jay was so full of life. It was just a lot of fun.
Extraordinary man, for sure. Launch it, man.
There we go.
Alrighty. Just for information, I can't get you on YouTube, but I'm getting you on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, something happened with the broadcast. I deleted it and restarted it.
Okay.
On YouTube. So, first time out on YouTube. Let's glitch it just a little bit.
That's fine. I'll just make sure I got you here.
It should come up now. So, and Sean is saying he switched from the phone to the work computer. Sean, are you on Facebook or are you on YouTube? I guess, because we're broadcasting to both of those right now. So
looks like Sean's on YouTube. The little icon right there.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, I guess if I look at it, weird. But yeah, anyways, when I tried to even type out a comment, it was telling me the broadcast was deleted on YouTube. So
okay.
So Adolph, do you want to tell us about this little snack?
About the
amber? Well, I'm not going to talk about the stripper series, although we can understand why amber, sienna, and everything. But so let's skip over that a little bit. We alluded to it, and it's perfect. It's all we need. Yeah. It's the 1824 series, 100% sherry cask matured in here, and people had a hard time with that. They didn't believe it at first. They were saying that it was seasoned, that it was in for 1 or 2 years. They couldn't believe them that it was matured in. Non-age statement, so it might not be all that many years. We had guesses of 8 to 12 years in there, and I would go with the 8, 9, 10-year-old sherry in there. I would agree with that.
I would stay closer to the 8, but
yeah, I'm probably even going to go a little lower than that.
Yeah,
well, and if it's a full part, it's whole life in it.
Yeah.
And if we can believe that it's non-colored, although on the bottle, if we're looking at my bottle, I don't see any mention of no coloring or cold chill filtering. So I'm guessing maybe it is both of them. If we go on the palate, I'm going to skip the nose just for a bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the oil feel you look for when it's non-chill filtered. So I'm guessing it's chill filtered. As far as a dram goes, it's non-offensive. Let's say that. It's non-offensive. There's nothing wrong with this dram. It's an entry-level dram. And if you take it as what it is, an entry-level sherry dram, I think it's quite good. So let's accept it at that level. And if we're talking about that, we can talk about the nose, palate, and finish. But just expect this to be a $60 on sale, an $80 not on sale bottle. And if you get it for 60, it's worth $60, and you share it with people. And when you're comparing it to the other Macallans, I think it's good. I think you can tell the Macallan palette with it. The central notes are Macallan notes, and from there you can kind of expand to the other ones to say this is more in this direction or more in that direction. So for that, I think it's fantastic. And the only thing I would like better would be a Macallan new make spirit that we would have to try to do that exact same thing. And Kent and I've been doing that over the weeks, comparing one to another and the flavors and what we think, but we haven't really gone back to a base level. This, and it's not by design, because I thought I had the Sienna, and then I had one, it was in a Douglas and Lang, I think, series where it was autumn, summer, spring, fall. Do you remember this series? They had different ones. So I have a Macallan in that series back here somewhere. And on Tuesday, when Ken asked me to look for it, I couldn't find it. And I found the amber, and it was open. So that's what we got tonight. So we're going to the base, and it's not by design, but I think it's a great idea. And my intent was to have the Sienna, which I thought would be comparable to the 12s. So we're sitting here on this. On the nose, I get vanilla. I get a little bit of lemon. My wife says more orangey citrus than lemon, but I'm going to stick with lemon. And like milk chocolate.
On the orangey. Yeah.
And she said raisins, but I always get raisins when I do with the sherry, and I can't. Some people can tell the difference between a dark raisin, a sultana. I'm not. I'm just going to say it's not plum. It's not deep and dark and rich, but I do get some type of raisin. I can't tell you the difference between one and the other.
Like I would say it verges on date.
Maybe.
Yeah, I could go with that.
Verges, not quite earthy enough, but verges.
Because I'm like raisin, date, plum. That's kind of how in my mind it goes up with the richness and the shit.
Dark fruits.
So you know what the smell of this reminds me of? Those little raisin boxes you used to get as a kid in the red one.
Not Christmas, but Halloween. And you'd still have them at Christmas because you freaking
Sunlight, I think, made them in the little red boxes.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
That's kind of what I'm smelling on that.
Okay. All right. So
it's really light.
It is.
Just nose this against your 12.
It's pleasant, is what this is.
Are we nosing into the new 12?
I nosed into the 12 because I just kind of wanted to see how much difference there was.
The new 12?
Yes, new. Yes,
oh, new I'm doing it with the old 12.
Where we're going next, right?
We're going new 12. Yeah.
All right. So I'm not skipping 2. It's just 1 to the side. Got it.
Yeah.
So
I don't see a huge difference between the new 12.
I thought there was a lot of difference on the nose between the new 12 and this. Like the new 12 is
the new 12 less sherried, to tell you the truth. There's a spice in there I'm having a hard time identifying on the new 12.
Well, yeah. So I'll give you the rundown on it whenever you want. Yeah. But I would say that you're going to be.
Before you do that, I'm going to say tastes lower, smells like Flintstones vitamins. Do you remember Flintstones vitamins when we were kids? That's what I get on the nose of the new 12.
Pretty sure I got some.
Not a bad smell. This is a great childhood smell, but I'm going to say the grape one in particular because those were my favorite. So kind of like a candy cherry or powdered sugary kind of smell, but a little bit.
So I find the amber has got a lot less nose to it than the 12 does.
I think the amber is just a little bit more like clean and straightforward. You know, it's kind of like you were saying, entry level sherry spirit flavors. You know, it's like kind of just 3 dimensions to it.
Yeah. No, I actually like the new 12 a lot better. It's a lot more. It fills the nostrils a lot better. I find the amber is kind of muted compared to the 12. I was kind of curious, just.
So 40% alcohol, correct, Dolph?
Yeah, it is straight up 40.
Yeah. So, and I would actually tend to say it's probably a little younger than 8, but But I never bothered looking into the ages that they were pushing into those casks. But I mean, their intent was to go straight down to 40, and it was to be able to push more bottles out with the very, very declining stocks that they had, right? And I mean, it was a survival technique. It was one of two ways they could have gone. They could have said, sorry, we're going to keep making the traditionals, but the price is going to go like exorbitant. It's going to go from like $56 to $65 for a 12-year-old to like $200 for a 12-year-old, and that was essentially the choice they were left with, right? And for better or for worse,
Well, that being said, like, I like this Sienna. It was, out of that whole lineup, that was my favorite, and it went from $110 when they first came out with it to $180, $190, and it's just not worth it.
Well, people liked it, but yeah, I agree.
No, I loved it when it, $120, even $130. But once it went north of that, I was done with it. So Sean is wanting to, let's see. He wants to hear our opinions on the Macallan versus the other distilleries.
Like, Glendronach. Is that like where he was thinking a little bit? Yeah, maybe Overlord, I don't know. There's a lot of sherry spirits, right? Yeah. So, Dolph, can I chat real quick with what I understood, what was going on with these guys as far as the casks, the amber and everything, and then dive into the 12?
It's all conversation. You're not asking for it.
No, whatever, man. I didn't want to step on your foot about the whiskey you offered, so that's all I'm saying.
No.
So the long and short of it is what essentially happened with Macallan was happening across the industry, right? So 70s, 80s, we were seeing massive die-off in not only the consumption of blendeds. Yes, exactly. Glenn Goyne, another nice grab, man. Massive die-off, not only in Scotch, but previously that, for like 60 years before that, sherry itself as an industry had continued to like rapidly decline, right? From being something that was in everybody's home to something that was in nobody's home. And bodegas died, beautiful sherry producers died. And what happened was, all those wonderful Solera casks could get picked up by distilleries. And then the Scotch industry started to die. And of course, people like Macallan were, amongst others, were producing products for the blended market that never saw the light of day, which is partially the reason why, Kent, that there were lots of stocks. There just weren't lots of stocks that fit that shape of what was their single malt in the marketplace that they wanted to keep. It was consistent. It's what grew their brand and what continued to grow their brand while other parts of the industry were literally dying. I mean, they were smart enough to pair themselves up with, the great Scottish international character of James Bond. And so they were able to build some backbone to survive and to get tied into the new executive movement that was largely being driven by vodka clubs and cocaine, right? That was the world, right? Yeah, it's the 70s, 80s, right? It was all vodka club, cocaine, and and all that kind of jazz, right? But they were able to be but we're still the Scotch, the Scotch, and so they kind of survived that way, right? But essentially, all that stuff had to come crashing down because, as we all know, there was this sudden and rapid onset of the bourbon, explosion of the bourbon whiskey love all over the world, and of course, with that came a general interest in whiskeys. And suddenly, all of a sudden, from 0 to 60, really to 0 to 120, they had to go from, they were just kind of getting rid of whiskey out the door. In 12-year-olds, they're wow, put older stuff in there, whatever, just get it out the door because we have so much. And then it was oh, now we have nothing. And we have this massive demand that's outstripped the last 30 years, right? Out of nowhere.
You believe that it actually, I think they were hedging their bets a little bit.
They had a decision ahead. Yeah, the decision made ahead of time, for sure.
So coming from the bourbon side a little bit, Derek Paul, when would you say that really started to gain traction? Because through the 80s, Scotch was dropping off.
70s and 80s, it was
it was downhill. When would you say the bourbon side of things started to kick back up?
Really, there's kind of two layers to, I think, the development of the bourbon revolution or whatever. So really the people saw the writing on the wall with Scotch in the early 60s. That was the purpose of pushing single malts to the marketplace in 63. That was what it was all about. And so that was kind of seen coming, and blends had been dying, and but really whiskey itself, Yeah. Oh, 100%. But yeah, absolutely. That's exactly part of the story, right? So really what happened essentially was the late 90s and early aughts. You had people, I would say probably about 20 years on either, 10 years on either side of that, sort of in that, matured 25-year-old drinking range, could be up to 40 and down, that suddenly were just ravenous for bourbon, and it was tied to a bunch of stuff, cultural stuff, and kind of a cultural evolution in the United States, wanting to go back to their own products and support themselves locally, and like before the local movement, but from a drinking perspective. And then, of course, following that, you had the Pappy explosion, and that hit a mainstream level, and that's obviously like the early aughts, right? And so, I mean, really, Scotch started to climb again in those late 90s, early 2000s period. And it's to be noted that that's also culturally a time period in the, in the modern Western world where the idea of being executive kind of came away from the vodka, cocaine, douchebag concept and went back to like nice suit, nice tie. Like that was the cultural movement again. And it was like, you don't have to throw out the ancestors' ways of doing things, and you can like kind of enjoy old school, getting a nice suit done, drinking a fine Scotch, smoking some cigars. It didn't have to be all like vodka, cigarettes, and cocaine. That's all I'm saying. But I mean, that's when Scotch really started to come back in the marketplace, especially here in Western Canada and in the United States. Right, Scotch started to come back at the same time that premium bourbon was like cool, man. So.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, I remember back in the '80s was pretty much the first time I ever tried Scotch, and Johnny Walker Red. Yeah, explains my disdain for it, but hopefully we'll have a tasting of them soon, and I might get my taste buds back for it. But
I think I think it's really important to just let whiskeys be what they are, where they are in the market, and I think like sometimes there's this idea that we need to like draw a yardstick and be like, and I get a lot of every day all the time, like, oh, I only drink Scotch that can vote. And I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
you are just missing thousands of flavors for no reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
to this day, my favorite is a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just so amazing. Of course, it was a single cask Nation 6 from an undisclosed distillery. And most people that have been around will kind of know what that is. But yeah, I just absolutely love it. Yeah. Yeah. Mine should be right about there. And
one of my favorites is an 8-year-old that was put out by the phenomenal Springbank. And it was called the CV, and it was much loved. It was an extraordinary romp through their cask selections. I mean, they plugged tastefully. Like if other distilleries had presented this concept to the market, I would have been like, okay, so you just took a bunch of casks that you weren't sure on and you smashed them together.
Yeah.
like a Glenfiddich Double X, or and I mean, like, whatever, it's drinkable, but I'm not gonna buy it, right? But don't get me started. But with the
Springbank, FYI,
it's like maestro work, right? Like it's like a symphony that's been perfectly choreographed together, expressing all these different flavor components from there, but at the same time being a unified whiskey. And that was only like roughly 8 years old, right? So yeah, there it is. Yeah,
there it is. Yeah, to this day, that is my favorite Scotch.
But I love young Scotches up front. All the flavors come bang. Not much on the finish. Nothing changes in the end. But that first initial experience, fantastic.
It's just in your face. But and then like, so I kind of have two favorites: anything Springbank and anything Ardbeg. Well, almost anything Ardbeg. They released an expression, and I'm not going to mention which one. And it was let's say it was a great cocktail Scotch. Anyways. And let's continue on with the Macallans.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Where were we? Oh, yeah. The 12.
Yeah.
Just one last thought before we go on. The Sienna, the nose and the palate are a bit disjointed. The palate's more flavorful than the nose. It's a bit too subdued. But again, compare this to the others. We'll come back to this and see how the other ones develop nicely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what, it's still a young, it's still a fairly young whiskey.
This is a great starter dram. It really is.
If I
Exactly.
had a friend coming by and that thing wasn't so incredibly overpriced as a bottle, I would happily have bought many of them and just been like, you know what, here you go. Here's a nice little Scott. Look, it's fancy. It's Macallan. You can enjoy it. It's way overpriced, like disturbingly overpriced. And it's unfortunate because they hurt a lot of their, much loved customers with the way they decided to deal with what was a very reasonable transition. And I think really any connoisseur who has a half grip on what whiskey is could understand, hey guys, we didn't predict that we would be getting the kind of demand out of nowhere that we're getting now. Like we went from, this to like everybody and their dog, right? Wanted Macallan. So it's tough. I think there was better ways they could have negotiated that whole experience. Whether they were going to go NAS or not, I think they could have negotiated difference. And they knew, and they've known, and there's been a lot of talk back for a long time from them that they had to find a way to get back to releasing
their age statements.
Yes,
Which everyone wanted.
12-year-old, especially because it was long held as the yardstick for an easily accessible, fantastic execution of sherried single malt. It was the yardstick, and continues to be, right? Or in a lot of people's minds continues to be. And so here it is. It's back now in the marketplace, just hitting Alberta in the last month or so. So it's brand new. It's back in the marketplace. Not in huge supply as we predicted, but it's here. But let's talk about this guy because it is 100% seasoned casks. Yeah. So it is not a production cask. It's seasoned cask.
And what do you mean by a production cask, Eric?
Let's talk about it, Dolph.
Yeah. I think we should.
Good man. Okay, so long story short, lots of stuff to get into with sherry, bodegas, complex regions, etc. Approaches, styles. There's a ton to it, right? We'd be talking, we'd be talking about bacteria, all kinds of stuff. What we're gonna say real quick. What's the price on the 12? $112 approximately, I believe, 116 maybe in my shop at the Canucks at the military base. Around town, I would expect to probably see it in the $120, $130 range for the new one. That would be my bet. That would be like most people's MSRP on it.
So we'll just plug Eric's shop because he's got some of the best prices around that I've seen, and he has a pretty decent selection that's going to become pretty amazing soon.
This stuff runs off my shelf, so I get these cool things, and I'll get my argued upon allotment, and then they just go away. And then I'm like, okay, if you come in, it's like you got to come in and check regularly because there'll be different things. Or give me a shout. Get at me at ericpaul.ca on Instagram or off my website. You can always email me from there. I believe my phone number is on my Instagram account. You can just hit that and call right off my Instagram.
Your phone starts ringing off the hook tomorrow. You know what happened. I
get a lot of weird, stuff, but that's part of business. You got to have a business line and it's got to be accessible, right? So, and I'm since 2013, I've been working as an independent consultant in the industry. So that's part of life. But yeah, if you guys ever want to come up and shop with us, the CanX, it is the Canadian Military Exchange. It is the military's only liquor store. We're doing some fun stuff. We're moving it from convenience model into a boutique, and the prices are great. And it's a cool way to put money back into the military community. So if you're a patriot at all, it's one way you can help to support things like Military Family Resource Center. You can support all kinds of programming for the families of people who work on the base. So there you go. Let me tell you about this. Dolph, you asked a great question.
What is a production cask, Eric?
What is a production cask? So we really have two major camps of casks in the world of sherry. We have those that are in production. So this is going to be the initial cask that the wine product will go into. It's going to help to form the bacteria and seal the wine. And then at that point, after a little while, could be a couple of years, could be 6 months, a couple of years, we're going to test it. We're going to smell it. We're going to say it's good. It's going to go into another cask. And then it's going to sometimes we'll be transporting that to different parts of the bodega or aging facilities. And then from there, or vat, and then from there, it's going to go into a Solera. Now, the Solera is the fun part, guys. Some of you will have been familiar with this. Some won't. Really short. Usually 3-layered system. Newest wine on top, oldest wine on the bottom. When they're going to bottle it, they pull a little bit from the bottom, and then they refill down. That's pretty much it. That's the game. And what that does is it creates a natural maturation and aging, a natural mixture in those bottom casks of beautiful ancient sherries. And some of these casks can be into the hundreds of years old. And these are production casks, along with the shipping cask after the sherry is matured and it's going to go to market. It could either be bottled, or at the beginning of the world of Scotch, and what drove single malts getting put into sherry casks were this kind of transport sherry butt, slightly different size from the Solera butt, and then that was what was transferred internationally on boats, etc. And so in the old days, if you were a lord, you would buy some sherry butts for your, aging cave. And then once you dumped those sherry, you bottled it often yourself when you felt it was ready. Then you would take that cask, you'd go up in the hills and you'd pay a Highland guy who you like the malt of, essentially a moonshiner at that point. And then all the way into the modern era, this process continued just via a broker and a marketing, right? So instead of it being like some guy going to some guy, it was like a sherry producer would sell off transport butts, or sell off occasionally, and during that death of sherry period, much more readily, Solera casks. Now Solera casks, on the other side of all this, when all the bodegas have died, this going back to like the 80s and stuff, when all the bodegas essentially died off and we had the ones that were left, now to get a sherry cask, a sherry butt, is like extraordinarily expensive, into the thousands and thousands of dollars, and multiple thousands of dollars. So they're prime and they're really rare. And what they do, and what Macallan was doing, is they were building off the back of both sherry butts and transport butts, production casks. And what they were doing, what it does is, because it's old wood, it doesn't give off tannic notes anymore, because those have been drained out. It still gives off wood notes, but it gives off this like ancient married sherry that's in there, from the young vivacious stuff that's only a few years old to the old stuff. All that's bound up in that wood. And so when they would put whiskey in it, this is how Macallan has these extraordinary old whiskeys, is because that they can age, in these kind of sherry butts, along with other people in the industry who've had some of these Glendronach, Glengoyne. There's other folks who were around, some of those Port Ellens that were really old, glorious. They were sitting in shared stuff, and they can age for such excessive periods of time and still have a really soft, drinkable spirit come out of them,
and not be too oaky. Yeah.
And not be too oaky, right? It's one of the things that made them like magic, right? Is that you could just put a whiskey in there for like 30 years, man. Like, you couldn't do that with a seasoned cask, which is what we have today. Because, of course, as I noted, all the sherry casks essentially really difficult to get now. So along comes the seasoned cask. And the seasoned cask is a 4-production cask, either American oak or Spanish oak, mostly American oak, that's prepared on behalf of or in conjunction with a whiskey manufacturer. So there's a master of the wood at Macallan, and they have their own process of arrangement with a producer of sherry, Oloroso, producer of sherry, and they are getting casks sized and shipped to them, and they're maturing sherry in it that will likely never become sherry that you would drink. So that's going to be sherry that's going to get powdered for a preservative, to use as a preservative in food. It's going to get distilled into brandy, and it's going to get mixed in as a fortifier, other kinds of, there's a variety of ways it gets used. And then sometimes if you're in Canada and you own a distillery, you might just buy some of it and pour it in your whiskey instead of putting it in a barrel, because that's still somehow legal.
9.09%, Max. But I was going to talk about Paxaret, but no, let's not. Sorry, the difference between the new cast, what we're doing now, and Paxaret in the 70s and 80s, but let's forget it. Let's continue with the whiskeys. Eric, we haven't discussed what we have on the nose of yours right now. We've talked about it a bit, but we haven't.
Yeah, I think you're going to get more malt notes, more predominant malt notes, no matter what, because you don't get the same. 2 to 5 years is typical seasoned cask sherry maturation. The wood is not tired. It has not opened up. The sherry has not pulled in there. It has not begun to transform. All kind of biochemistry happens inside the stave and that hasn't occurred. So what you're getting is some of the wood that's kind of got in there. It's actually going to be excreting some of the younger, less transformed wood notes. So you're going to get a little bit more tannic presence from the wood. You're going to get less tannic presence from the sherry, and they don't have the same structure on the palate. And it's certainly not going to be as oily and complex, but it's still more oily and complex, arguably, than the other one. Presentation of this one here is 43, I believe, 43% elk. Yeah. So
3 for that.
yeah,
Actually, everything they've been doing lately, the double oak, the triple oak, and that one, I think they're all 43.
yeah, they wanted to keep some of that oil presence, I think, and from my interpretation, that seems to be what was driving that percentage choice, was that like to go down to 40. I don't think that they could get the kind of like with this is 40, but you get incredible structure off of it, right? Which you can't get without being slightly higher percentage.
Is it labeled as being chill filtered or colored?
It's a great question. I've seen that it is natural color, but the chill filtration probably happening, and with the presence, the tones, the color, the clarity, and the presence on the palate, it's not surprising. I'm sure they have some level of filtration happening. It is natural color, though, you guys, and I think part of the reason why they wanted to go with natural colors, they know where the industry's at right now. They know what everyone wants. They know that sophisticated Scotch drinkers enjoyed Macallan at a time. And they know they lost some of that to the market. They knew they lost that to people like Glendronach and Glengoyne and some of the other fantastic people that have been doing beautiful things. Well, Mr. Walker ran off now to do his thing at Glenallachie. Like, you're going to get gorgeous stuff out of those guys, because they secretly still had stashes of lots of old original production butts that they could just be maturing stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they had to say something. They know they had to say something, and I think making sure that they went with a natural color and just really being a little bit more selective, because of course they have a lot more casks now at play than they did when they launched the NAS. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing the 12 come back to market, is they have stuff that they can put in a bottle that's 12 years old, that will be deep enough that they're going to grab back some of the love from the very huge amounts of whiskey aficionados, nerds, connoisseurs, like, passionate people, and those people like me in the industry who work frontline or work, business to business. Yeah. And they want us to be in love with Macallan again. They want us to feel like there's a new endeavor happening. I think that's part of people to come home. Yeah, I want people to come home, and I don't blame them, man. Like, Macallan's got a great history, a great heritage. They just put millions of dollars into an extraordinary facility. It is from the outside. It is.
I wish I had this set up. I would post a picture of the new plant. Wow.
Yeah, well, and people, if you're at cruising YouTube, there's some incredible tours you want and stuff. So, like, let's just talk a little bit quickly about the spirit. This is coming to us under the new Whiskey Mastery team. This is coming to us with the work of Kristen. I think it's Kirsten. And she's at the head of it. She did extraordinary stuff, with the rest of their Edrington endeavors. So their team, they've got Stuart McPherson, who's doing the Master of the Wood. He started in 1979 as a production guy, building casks. Well, 1979 as an apprentice, and then later on. And right now they've got 16 full-time production coopers. So those must be the folks that are building the seasonable barrels for them. And then on to that, they got 3 apprentices right now, and then they've got 7 service coopers that are fixing casks. This is everything from regular cask leaking, which happens all the time, stuff in some reeds and splats.
That's a large crew just to keep their cask together and keep building new ones, right?
It is their commitment to the wood. They want to get back to that place where their sherried products are deeply loved, and they've got Glendronach under management yipping at their heels, wanting to be the world's top sherried producer. Yeah. And it's funny, now we have 2 big names at the helm behind what were arguably long-standing, small-scale, rich history distilleries, right? So, but the new team, Kirsten, she's the whiskey master. And then following her, the whiskey maker, the whiskey master, and then following her, it's of course McPherson, which I mentioned, and then Sarah Burgess, or is essentially behind Kirsten as whiskey maker, along with Polly Logan, and then Stephen Bremner. Along with then in the sample room these days, I guess, is Russell Craig. I don't know much about Russell Craig. I'm sure we could look him up. But that's kind of the team that brought us this. And they're the ones who are like, yeah, we're excited. Yeah, let's get this going.
It's good that they come back to their roots. Because, I mean, I was a huge Macallan fan back in the day. And then, like I say, the Sienna came along and I liked that. And then I just kind of went away from Macallan because it just wasn't Macallan anymore. And I mean, Macallan's one of those household names there. Everybody that, even remotely dances with Scotch knows the name, right?
Well, 007, that was a big one.
Yeah, that was a big coup for them. And it made sense, right? Like, it was a big coup for them. It was a good fit for the time period. It was a bit of a gamble because, of course, we know who was, James Bond at that period. And his Bond is shaky. It's a shaky Bond. We're not going to talk about Bond. It's a long conversation, so we won't talk.
I'm good with all the Bonds. I would switch places with any of the Bonds.
Well, with any of them. But actually, I really like the new. I like the Craig Bond. I like his deconstruction of the severe issues with Bond. But
let's go. Let's take it in the time period it was, and
exactly.
Okay, we talked about Bond too much.
Unfortunately, like many conversations today, take it for the era it came from and leave it there and learn from it.
Yeah. I think I think there's some flexibility when we're talking about just characters on TV. Sure, but we won't get into politics.
Let's not go there.
Well, one of my favorite characters is still Fred Flintstone, and he's horrible.
Yeah, he's a horrible.
You bring him nowadays, and he would be destroyed.
So, we'll interrupt this for a brief shout out to SYC for making some beautiful Italian style Pilsner that is just keeping my palate wet tonight. So if you guys want to drink it. Pontificato, man. It's fantastic stuff. So,
well, if we're doing shout outs, I'm going to shout out to my buddies over at Two Brewers.
Definitely. Always shout those guys out.
Oh, I love the Two Brewers. They make some very delicious stuff.
Yeah.
So you want to do a
shout out to Ardbeg, Corey Vraken, and my Glenfarclas 25 from Kingston Wine Market, which I was introducing a friend to Sherry today, before I came to you guys. So we didn't talk about Glenfarclas, which
definitely a fantastic producer who does some beautiful things and certainly works with Sherry in extraordinary ways. I mean, there's so many great producers that we could be talking about. We're here to talk about Macallan. We're here to talk about the change from production cask work and season cask work to just season cask work. And so let's because they're keeping all the really wonderful stuff to be old stuff that they can put in Lalique Crystal and sell to us for like $100,000. And why wouldn't they? I would. I'd do that. So I don't blame them for not dumping it all in 12-year-old bottles. They made the choices they made. I think they could have done it better, but they made the choices they made, and here we are today. So on to this majestic beauty, Kent.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You get excited.
Just yeah.
Because 12-year-olds, like, come on.
Yeah.
This was stupid. And the price you could pay for it at one point was like,
oh yeah. This bottle, like, it literally opened it for just tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way. Sláinte to you, sir, for opening that.
Hey, not a problem. Because it has been literally probably sitting on the shelf for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years.
And what'd you pay for it then? 70?
Oh, if that, yeah, it was
50 to 70.
Rather, it was a decent price on the shelf back then. But then, up until 5 years ago, all Scotch was kind of a decent price. It's really gone this. Everything's gone up at least 50% in the last 5 years. So,
yeah.
Making it almost
tons of goodness.
Scotch, which is a good thing I get that we're going into our Canadian whiskey, which I'm going to plug Dolph on. So the Spirit of Edmonton, also the president of ASS, or the Alberta Scotch Society. And you want to chat a little bit about the ASS group?
Our ASS group?
Yeah.
Well, we're not promoting it. We are a group of lovely individuals, and everyone on here is part of our group. We're not allowed to promote it. That's the thing. To be able to stay a club, you have to be good friends with us to be able to be included within the club so that you can share the casks and the bottles that we buy. So that enables us, because there's been some talk a little bit with stores doing tastings and getting in a little bit of trouble. We're a club, and as a club, we're a group of people that buys bottles, whatever the bottles are, and as the president, I get to decide which bottles we buy. So I buy the bottles, and everyone pays a certain amount of money to be part of the tasting. So for me, I drain the bottle into 25 little 1 ounce or a little bit less if it's a 700 mil, and it's shared between everybody. Everyone shares the cost, and we enjoy the scotch together, or whiskey in that case, which we were doing. Our next one is well, no, I shouldn't be talking about it. We're not talking about, because that's one thing I did find out. We are not supposed to be promoting it within the general public. If you're a friend of a friend, we can introduce you into the club. We can bring you in, and you can go to tastings, but it's not something that we're supposed to promote.
So you could write an article as the head of your club and get that published in the newspaper. That would be legal, but you couldn't order an advertisement.
Yes. And it's a little bit shaky when they talk about what's that one you do online, Eventbrite. That's a little bit shaky too, because what you have to do now is they have to be part of your club, sign into your club to actually get the promotion of it.
Yeah, I would stay off of Eventbrite if you can help it, for sure.
Well, we don't have to. All of our tastings,
what do you do?
To our people, and every one of us get into it within. We've got 40 members, and we need 24 for a tasting. So we sell out pretty quickly. So, but I think we're going to expand our bottles to actually buying 2 bottles each. We might have a little bit more in the bottle, fill up the 1 1/4 ounce each instead of just the 1/4 or just the 1 ounce. But that's what we do with the Alberta Scotch Society.
Anyways, that's a whole new area.
And we're buying a cask, by the way, as well, coming up pretty quick. And so we'll all find out about that too. But you have to be a member to buy a cask.
Yes. Buy a bottle out of it. Anyways.
How about you talk about Saturday?
Saturday.
The book club.
Saturday is our, Friends of Ass. So our Alberta Scotch Society, we are doing a book club, and we started with Davin. And, actually, I don't. It's a long reach over there for the other one. But anyways, we started with Davin's first book, which got us into Canadian whiskeys, and thanks. Really opened our eyes up. And then we went into Ralphie. Well, I'm glad you have all the books handy. So
it's always sided with me. I don't have the new one, so it's all up to you for that one.
I actually do have the new one, which was on time. And we're now on to this one. So Davin with his co-author Blair join us every Saturday as we go through all these Canadian whiskeys. And
253 distilleries, and we're doing 15, maybe 16 of them. We're going to see if we do one extra one in Manitoba that is a really big one that maybe we weren't going to do before, but that's it. So this week we're with Dub Glass. So in the south of BC, they're fantastic. I'm on. You're not on until the after dram, but you're in the after dram, I'm hoping. And because we like the after dram, that's where we have the most fun. We get half the viewers for that after dram. I think we're close to 150 for our last show, by the way.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
From so, 100. The thing is, we've got, Dolph, obviously the president, is the ringleader of this whole thing. And then
separate from the Alberta Scotch Society. It is the Whiskey Book Club, and it's just us as clubs. Although most of us are members of ASS, it's not related to ASS.
It's a non-ASS.
It's
ASS adjacent. It's ASS adjacent.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. But the cool thing is, how often do you get to sip on a whiskey, talk to the author, the co-author of a book that wrote about the whiskey, and then talk to the owner or master distiller of that whiskey? Like, it's unheard of. So, and we're going across Canada with this. So,
great Saturday night.
Yeah, it is Anita
I'm
event.
going to be fishing, I think. You guys are going to be doing that. I'm going to be probably fishing with a bottle of scotch. So I'll be there in spirit.
And we'll drool over your pictures after we're done.
That's right. That's the game plan. And I will watch your thing, and then the circle is complete.
Yeah, that your pictures from the mountains last weekend were just amazing.
I had a ton of fun. I got a few more stashed away for down the road, but you know, you guys,
beautiful. Where it was just the mountain view it was nice.
Yeah, well, that was actually like 25 feet from where I camped. So that's
nice.
Little morning when
Good
I'm there.
place to wake up in the morning, eh?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Good job, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Tell us about your whiskey, buddy.
About my whiskey. So we are now into an older, like I say, I go to the camera. Yeah, we're looking at the older 12. I was actually, Eric, you want to put your 12 up so they can see label changes?
So this is your 12. Oh, the new 12.
The new.
Yeah.
Oh, the bottle. Yeah, hold the bottle right out.
We'll get you up to speed. Yeah.
I'll keep sniffing as you guys are doing. I'm good.
That's fine. So yeah, you can see there is definitely a difference in label. Macallan likes to change labels as they change what's in the bottle. And I really, honestly, I haven't had time with the heat. I've been quite busy with work, but I haven't got into this bottle to see what it was made up or anything like that. Other than, like I say, we are in actual sherry casks for this.
So this is So you got it's production sherry casks. Some probably some seasons, because we got some date codes, but so
yes. Oh yeah. Do we want to look up the actual age on this?
Yeah, well, we can look at the pressing period, when it was hitting the market, when it was bottled and everything.
And what do you mean by these
guys? If you shine a light through the label, you can read the code.
Yeah, the code is located on the glue
side of the label.
The glue side of the front label.
Yeah.
And what does that tell you, gentlemen? What possible information would we get from this?
Yeah, it's from an industry side, super important because it's part of how we ensure quality control when we do vatting. So with an organization like them, they're going to be putting out, say, a single expression. In this case, the 12-year-old expression, are going to be putting out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vattings of it. And as a result, they want to make sure there's a consistency between those vattings. That's what they have specialists who do the work for. But there needs to be trackability and history. And most organizations, I'm sure Macallan is no different, I don't know in this case, but most will keep a single bottle or 2 bottles or 5 bottles, depending, of each vatting. So those numbers that Dolph's showing you there are a code that are going to indicate the lot number of the vatting and the time, the date, and the year. And so it's a trackable way to know. So if they there was some complaints for a little while during that transition period leading up to the NAS, that people were getting a lot of sulfur notes off of their Macallan 12s and, some of the other slightly older ages, maybe even 8 from time to time. I know I fielded a ton of questions during that period from Macallan lovers who were coming in to buy Macallan from me, saying, I'm getting so much sulfur off of this. And so then I would have to crack a bottle and I would smell it and I'd be like, yeah, there's so much sulfur. And then I would have to be like, do you want to return it? Yes, no. If not, okay, cool. Then I got to call Edrington, someone who's with Edrington in the area, and say, hey, there's a problem. It's lot number, blah, 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 blah. And this is what we're getting. And then that goes all the way back up to Macallan, and then someone pulls one of those bottles that's been sealed since the date of its pressing in a lockup. And this is how most companies work. I don't know if this is the exact process of Macallan, but this is pretty common. And then they're going to look at that lot number. They're going to tap it. They're going to smell it. They're going to, oh, yeah, there's sulfur. That's not good. Let's get that bottle out of that guy's hands. Let's get him another one from a different lot. They might even go so far, if it was bad enough, to do a recall, which is rare. But it could happen. But it's rare. So that's
a lot of people honestly won't notice or don't have the palate to notice heavy sulfur. Well, they'll notice it, but they won't know it's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, and it's a problem with some sherry casks. It can come through on some sherry notes, especially some of those sort of later casks. that were, that you saw floating around the market during that period of time. You would see sometimes these kind of eggy, sulfury notes coming through. And I think that's a little bit has to do with some of the interaction. Like, I don't know the exact for sure's on this, but a little bit some of the interactions with younger casks, because it's still a lot of younger casks at that period. Like, they're still often production casks, but they could be still younger casks. Some of them were seasoned. So, you would be kind of getting the impact of both. And I think that can, it's just one of the classic things you see with sherry is sulfur. So when it's problematic, I'm blown away with like how much this amber is like breaking down in my glass. Like, it's actually like pretty cloudy. That amber got pretty cloudy pretty quick.
Yeah.
Versus my 12s, which have remained pretty clear.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
No, mine's still clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
It's definitely not like super cloudy. Like, it's not like someone threw water into like.
I would have been happy if it was cloudy, but I'm not seeing.
Yeah.
All right, we got 4 minutes.
Beauty though.
We can do this. Are we doing a comparison between the two? Like, dislike?
I would say I like both. I obviously definitely still like the old 12 a little bit better because I love some of the deeper notes that are coming through it. I love some of the more heathery notes that some of those earthier tones that you can get with Scotch that's been matured in production sherry. But the vibrancy and the brightness of the fruit notes in the new 12 is exciting. And I think
I agree.
It has to be like we kind of have to accept that this is a different world we live in now. And as much as we might want to yearn for these older bottlings and probably spend way too much money getting them.
Well, you're spending a lot of money to get those leathery notes, the deep, rich ones. But sometimes it's not appropriate for the situation. When I'm outside today in the sun and it's bright, it just, although it's a beautiful dram, you want something a little bit more lively. I do.
Yeah, I would definitely like to have these side by side all the time just for that fact, right? Because they are, as much as they're both 12, they're completely different.
They really are very different. I mean, definitely a return to form in terms of execution by Macallan. I for the price, like paying 110 for this, 120 for this, I will do that. I'm not really going to do it myself. Nature of the beast.
But you'll carry it so someone can in your store.
Yeah, I would recommend it to people, actually. If someone said to me, I used to love buying Macallans, I've been disappointed. This is fruity, it's vivacious, it's lively. It's still got some great maturity on it. It's still definitely a 12-year-old. It's got some fun, and it holds up great against a cigar. Like, it does. It's got great balance against a rich Maduro or something like that, which would be something you would do with the classic Macallan. So in that respect, it's a ton of fun. And, not an ageist by any means. I tell people all the time that age is not how you judge a whiskey, and it's a terrible decision because it just you can't even begin to really understand what's happening with whiskey if that's going to be your yardstick. But paying $120 for a 12-year-old, $10 a year, it's not so bad. Like, it could be much worse than this. So, like, I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it.
And if you're part of SMWS like I am, we pay a whole bunch more than $10 a year for something.
Yeah.
15 to 20 is what we're at.
We can't say natural, but it is natural colored. So,
That being said, so far my favorite is the old 12.
Oh, yeah.
Just hands down.
Like, our favorite is also probably like the 18-year-old or the 21 or the 25 or the 30. They're all phenomenal.
Yeah,
well, wait till we get to the cast strength in a couple minutes before we make those decisions.
Yeah,
because
we're actually shut this down because I think that's a good break point. We're gonna go
double fist these away, right?
Yeah. We're gonna be back in about 5 minutes, so please come back and join us, and we'll be going into a Macallan cast strength. Just give you a potty break and refill your glasses, and we'll see you shortly.
You shall, sirs.
Thanks for joining us.
Ciao. Cheers.